Hey guys, Terry Red here, and in this video, we are going back to my Virtual Pinball Video Essentials series, and we are going to be talking about DOFLinx. That's right. You've seen loads of my other videos in my channels that deal with DOFLinx on future pinball tables, on Pinball FX3 or Pinball FX2, or maybe even some really neat oddball MAME stuff with some crazy light shows and some other things going on. So we're going to be talking about the whole gambit here of what DOFLinx is, how it's progressed, all the different things it does, how to install it, how to configure it for obviously a cabinet, and also for desktop, so that, you know, if you wanted to use it just for, say, a PuP-Pack with Pinball FX3 or future pinball tables, we're going to talk about that as well. So we're going to go through the whole thing. There's a lot to talk about, so let's just jump right in it. So obviously you saw this video just running here. You know, this is a future pinball avatar and the crazy light show I created for it using DOFLinx. Well, things didn't always start out that way. Let's go back to the beginning, shall we? That's right. DOFLinx was made by a wonderful gentleman called DDH69, and one day, years ago, I discovered his little program called DOF FX2, and what this program did was it allowed you to use any key on your keyboard or a button control to trigger outputs on DOF. So in other words, what that meant is if you had a cabinet with lighting, just like what I had here, for the basic stuff, not for addressable LEDs, but the basic stuff like your flashers or your beacon or your strobes, that sort of thing, you were able to trigger that with a key. So in other words, if you wanted to make your flipper solenoids go off when you hit a button, that would work. If you wanted to make lights go off when you hit a button while you hit your flippers, that would work. It didn't react to the game events themselves. It just reacted to a button push, and then it turned on an output. And in this case, we used it for every output of an LED Whiz or a PAC LED 64, whatever he was able to support at the time. And it initially was only designed for Pinball FX2. So that's what this video is showing here.
And it's triggering my solenoids, and you'll see in the game it actually does work. But on top of that, if you look at the back cab lighting, you can see it.
Oh man, that's taking me back. 2016. Wow, man. Wow, it's hard to believe. Time flies. So yeah, so that was a big deal because Pinball FX2 and Future Pinball didn't have DOF support. Future Pinball had LED Whiz support from GLXB, but only so many tables had it, and it wouldn't work with any other cabinet controllers for like PAC LED or anything else like the Saint Smart relay boards, and nothing else would work with it, right? Whereas with DOF, the awesome DOF and DOF Config Tool supports almost everything out there for hardware that can control your lights and everything. So this is a big deal for him to be able to support DOF at even a basic level with lights and buttons, which meant you could use it initially only with Pinball FX2. That was a huge deal. Now, myself, I do what I've kind of become to be having a reputation for. I contacted him, telling him how awesome I thought this program was, and I told him this would be amazing if you could allow this to work with any program, not just with Pinball FX2. And sure enough, he did, and that was awesome. Things just went from there, and then it went even much further. And so he now branched out and he got DOF working for Future Pinball. And I'm sure you've seen my other videos where once he got that working, this wasn't just keys or buttons making things happen. This was actual control, just like you would see in Visual Pinball. The table script and the events of the table can be programmed to control all your lighting and feedback devices. So your solenoids, your flashers, your beacons, your strobes, your undercrab lighting. So this was me, the second table I ever did, anything for DOFLinx for, on Future Pinball, and it was great. Like, that was a huge, huge deal, so I embrace that wholeheartedly, as I always do, and, me and him just worked through trying to, get that to work, and, he just got it working more and more, and then I would try more and more things, and it would just expand from there. So then, eventually, that expanded even more to the point where he got the same kind of feedback working on Pinball FX3. So you were able to get the same lighting and all that controlled from the in-game triggers in the game. Now, at a basic level, like your flippers, your slings, your bumpers, and a few other, triggers that he was able to find in the game, and he would get that working for Pinball FX3. So that was awesome. We got all the basic DOF stuff for both, almost all the tables in Pinball FX3 eventually, and then whatever tables you want with Future Pinball, which I had a good selection going, and some other guys jumped in and helped out. So then eventually one day, after my persistence and trying to let him know how awesome it would be to have the ever excellent LEDs, or addressable LEDs working with it, like you saw in this video earlier on there, like the crazy lighting and everything else that was going, like all this stuff back here. I kept trying to inspire him to see if he could figure out how to get that to work, and as a result, not only was he able to get that to work, he got everything that you can trigger in DOF, any toy. So everything that you see here on the right side or the left side, all these toys now could be used for Pinball FX3 and Future Pinball. So eventually that became a reality, and this video showcased off my first creation for that. I embraced that wholeheartedly, and this was the first Future Pinball table to have addressable LEDs, and then you could see what he was able to do for Pinball FX3 in terms of getting the basic triggers working, so that you were able to get some basic addressable LED effects on that as well. And so that's where we got, and then eventually that progressed to Pinball FX3, because Pinball FX2 no longer was supported, and Pinball FX3 came out, and then it took a lot of hard work, and then DD869 got that working no problem. So yeah, and it's just showed off more of that. So on top of that, I forgot to mention, not only did he get addressable LEDs and DOF working with Pinball FX2 and 3, but he also got direct B2S backglasses working. That's what you're seeing in this video right now. So that, reacting to the flippers or your buttons or various other triggers throughout the table, he was able to have that work with direct B2S backglasses, which is the same thing that visual pinball tables use. So that was another big deal. So I mean, it was able to not only do the basic stuff still, where if a table did not support full DOF from either the in-game triggers that he was able to make work, or from a Future Pinball table script, then it would fall back to the basic stuff, where you would at least still get your basic flippers and solenoids working with the buttons that you would trigger on any program that didn't support it, which was only Pinball FX and Future Pinball. So that's where we got to that point. So fast forward, and even more capability came along when the wonderful Pinup Player came out, and as a result, I got heavily involved in that. As you guys know, I got lots of PuP-Packs and other things working for visual pinball, and I, of course, tried to inspire DDH to, see if he could somehow get that working for DOFLinx. And sure enough, he was able to deliver with lots of hard work, and we got DOFLinx supporting Pinup Player and PuP-Packs. So as a result, you could see the Future Pinball table is not only doing all the cool lighting and everything, but it's also playing pinup player videos on the back glass, on the topper screen. It worked fantastic. Absolutely awesome. This is like a dream come true for me because I was like so pumped about this, So as you can see, it could just make the cabinet experience so much cooler, and it was just awesome to be able to have this capability in Future Pinball, because with Future Pinball, you're able to script it any way you want, do whatever events you want, compared to like Pinball FX, where you can only react to the triggers that he's able to find. So that was a big deal. But then, of course, that got expanded as well to Pinball FX3, so that you can have pinup player trigger from the DMD the videos like normal, but you can also see DOFLinx working in Pinball FX3 with awesome lighting and everything. But then we went a little further, and because Nailbuster, who created Pinup Player, added surround sound feedback trigger support to Pinup Player, as a result, then that allowed Future Pinball and Pinball FX3 to use surround sound feedback. So that's a result of what I did here. So this was me creating basic surround sound feedback PuP-Packs for your flippers, slings, bumper, drain, and ball launch. Every table by default would have that. It would work. So that was a huge deal for anyone who has surround sound feedback for that to work at a basic level. That's awesome. So, as a result, Pinball FX3, DOFLinx would read the triggers from the game, and then it would pass that on to Pinup Player, and then Pinup Player would then trigger the surround sound feedback sounds. So as you can see, DOFLinx is extremely important for Pinball FX3 and 2 and Future Pinball. Without it, it's the link between both the hardware in your cabinet and Pinup Player. So it has become a very big deal, like a huge deal. And then, of course, I went even further with that, and I went kind of back to the basics of the fact that DOFLinx can trigger things with just buttons and keys. So in this case, you could see DOFLinx with just only button and key presses, making all the addressable LED effects happen during this game, but it also triggers Pinup Player videos on the back glass. So when you push the missile button, you see missile blasts going off, or side effects. And then here in Stargate, for another arcade game, you've got an example of particle effects as an attract mode, but then when I push my coin button and then my start button, it triggers other effects. And the beacon, like anything that DOF can control on your cabinet, DOFLinx can trigger with a button. Anything that Pinup Player can do on a PuP-Pack, DOFLinx can trigger on a button. So that's what this DOFLinx effects I came up with was all about. So that way you can use basic effects for almost any game based on just button pushes. And you can see the effect. Like, totally cool. So to say that DOFLinx is a big player is a huge player. And then now, of course, my newer PuP-Pack that's about to come out is my Jaws Ultimate Pro PuP-Pack, which is using Pinup Player videos, topper videos, as well as the full lighting and feedback, but it also has surround sound feedback with like almost 100 surround sound feedback triggers alone. Like every mechanical sound in the entire table is being triggered. All of them from the table script. So the table talks to DOFLinx, and then DOFLinx talks to Pinup Player, and Pinup Player pushes out the videos and the surround sound feedback sounds. So that's where we're at today. So yeah, that was a lot to cover, but let me tell you, man, like it's important to go through the whole spectrum here so that everyone understands like just how big a deal this program is and all the different things it can do. So at a basic level, it will trigger your stuff. Anything that DOF or Pinup Player can do, it will trigger it at a button if you set up the configuration for it. For for Future Pinball, if the table is supporting DOFLinx, then it can trigger your feedback or a PuP-Pack for videos. And for Pinball FX2 and Pinball FX3, it could do the same thing, but only with whatever triggers that DDH is able to find from the table. So much more limited than like a Future Pinball table. So that's where we're at. So that's our full explanation of DOFLinx and its capabilities. Okay, so now we're going to go through the process of installing DOFLinx. Now, before we start that, you absolutely have to be sure you have all your prerequisites installed. What does that mean? That means that you need to, well, the smart thing to do would be to go to my Virtual Pinball Software Essentials video, which takes you through the entire process of all Virtual Pinball Essentials software and programs that you need. And yes, it is important to have all of it installed. Whether you're a PinCab user, whether you're just a desktop user, it doesn't matter. You need everything that this program goes through and installs one way or another. Don't skip a step. Don't skip a program. If you do, you're just going to have nothing but problems. So what that video does is it takes you to the install guide here, the PinUp install guide wiki. Now, this page is dedicated to all the prerequisites before you get to installing PinUp Player. Now, if you want to install PinUp Player, obviously you want to come here. If you don't want to install PinUp Player, but you want to just install DOFLinx, guess what? You still want to come here. So I recommend you go from beginning to end, just like the video shows you. Make sure every piece of this has been installed and up to date, right up till DOFR3, which is obviously the big one for DOFLinx, right? And then if you're going to obviously install PinUp Player, well, then you'll go through that process as well. All right. So once you have all that stuff sorted out and taken care of, then you can install DOFLinx and you will download DOFLinx here. All right. Make sure you always get the newest version. And I already have it downloaded, but I'm going to do that again anyway. All right, so this is what you'll get with DOFLinx. So where you install that will go to your direct output folder. This is where DOF is installed. So normally I have mine on my C drive and it goes to direct output. So we're going to put all the files in there. All right. There you go. So now that we've done that, there's a few other steps we have to do. So for future pinball, you're going to need to install the newest DOFLinx VBS file, this file that came here, into your future pinball folder. And then you have to have a scripts folder. If you don't have one, then you create one. All right. So it's future pinball scripts, and then we copy it in here. So that's what we're going to do. And I just copy it in here. I don't move it in there. You can still have this here. That's fine. But you must have this in this folder if you're going to be using anything with future pinball and DOFLinx. All right. So now we have a couple more files we have to deal with. So you need to look into your direct output config folder. Now, whether you're a PinCab user or a desktop user or any configuration that you're using, it doesn't matter. You have to be sure that you have these files: direct output config.ini and global config b2s server.xml. Those two files are used by DOFLinx. So if you don't have them, don't worry. In fact, here, I'll delete this one so I can show you where you will get it. So in this folder, the sample ini files folder, just find this guy here. That's the same file. It's the same file for the purposes of what you need. Now, if you already have that file, don't replace it. Obviously, it's obviously a PinCab user will have their own file there if they have certain hardware. So this is for everyone else who doesn't have the file. All right, so there you go. That one's taken care of. Now we need this guy. Now, if you don't have him already, then easy to take care of. All you got to do is go to here and run the global config editor. So you're going to have this brought up. So all you need to do is, for this portion here, you're going to just tell it where the ini files are. This is basically your DOF config files. So you're going to go to direct output config. You just select that folder, and then that's it. Super simple. For the cabinet config, that's if you have a cabinet XML file. You may have one. If you're a cabinet user, you may have one. You may not, depending on what hardware controllers you're using it. So if you do, then just select the file, and that's normally in this folder here, your direct output config folder. But I don't have one because this is my desktop setup, so that's why I don't. You don't have to make one or anything like that, so don't worry if you don't have that file. So logging, if you want to have it logged, that's up to you. LED Wiz, this is just for cabinet the owners who have LED Wiz. If you need to make any adjustments, that's fine. And the same thing for Pack LED. So all you do now is you just save it. It goes into your direct output config folder. And then I already have one here, but this is what I want you to call it. This right here. It's important that it's named this, okay? And then you're going to save that. Again, if you already have one, then you don't have to worry about it. So that's it for the actual installation of the main DOFLinx files. Now, there will be more if you have B2S files, direct B2S files, and you want to use those. But beyond that, that's it for the actual installation of DOFLinx files, except for one more portion. And that portion will be adding a DOFLinx.ini file, but that is part of our configuration and setup. So that is going to be different depending on if you're a cabinet user or someone who only wants SSF or pinup player or like for PuP-Packs or that sort of thing. So we're going to go through both and explain everything, and then we'll do that process as well. Okay, guys, so now I'm going to go through the setting up of the DOFLinx.ini file for anyone who's in the following situations. So if you are a desktop user who has no cabinet at all whatsoever, and you just want to run, for example, future Pinball PuP-Packs or possibly Pinball FX3 PuP-Packs, then this section will apply to you. If you are a cabinet owner who doesn't have any kind of lighting or feedback or hardware or anything whatsoever, and you only want to run future Pinball PuP-Packs or Pinball FX3 PuP-Packs, then this section will apply to you. If you are a cabinet user who does have, for example, addressable LEDs only in a cabinet, this applies to you. If you are someone who has only surround sound feedback in your cabinet and you want to use the Pinball FX3 surround sound feedback PuP-Packs, this applies to you. If you are someone who has a cabinet and has both of those things, but none of the other lighting at all, or LED buttons, or beacons or toys. Bottom line is, if you have a cabinet and the only fancy stuff you have is addressable LEDs or surround sound feedback, then this also applies to you. Anyone else who has any toys beyond that for DOF in a cabinet, then you got to use the section of the video that details all the full description of everything in the DOFLinx.ini. This one is a basic, simple setup that has very little to set up. So it's going to be super easy for you guys. I'm going to make it super easy for you. So first thing is, you guys should have already had this file installed and this file installed. That was in the install portion of the video. So you guys should be good to go with that. If you are Future Pinball, then you would have already copied the DOFLinx.vbs file. And I'll reiterate, you would have had the Future Pinball folder, DOFLinx VBS file copied to your scripts folder, and it should be in here. All right. So we'll come back to the Visual Pinball folder in a moment, because that is something we'll be getting into. So super simple, guys. All you got to do for your DOFLinx.ini file is go to my update minimal. Now, there could be a newer version already made by the time you see this video, like if it's like a year from now or something. I don't know when you watch this video. There could be one already pre-made for you guys. But for now, if you're not sure, go out to this one here, the update minimal. So it should look like this, okay? So it's got the commands in there still, but not all that extra explanations and all that. It's less intimidating, I guess. And then you're going to copy it in here. And then you're going to rename it to DOFLinx.ini. Okay, so we're going to edit this now. So we're going to make this super, super simple. We're going to take out all the stuff we don't need. So first things first, these commands here, we don't need. All right, because that's RGB under cab lightings related. And these commands here are all the normal DOF hardware. So your solenoids, your beacons, your flashers, your LED buttons, all that stuff is taken out of here. Now, if you're someone who needs some of that stuff, then you need to watch the other section of the video. So we're going to take all of these guys, gone. We don't need any of that. All right. These guys, we don't need either. Gone. And guess what? These guys, we don't need either because we don't use any of this stuff. Anyone watching this portion of the video, you don't need any of this stuff. So this is all you're going to need for everything I just explained. So all you guys need to do now is make sure that everything is correct here. Actually, I'm going to bring this back over here. Well, okay. Yeah, okay, folks. I will do this first. So first things first, we're going to add one extra line here. I forgot. So we're going to add one single thing for the desktop users only. For a cab user, you may not want this, depending on how you have your Windows set up. All right, so what this is going to do is, all this is going to do is, it's going to allow DOFLinx, when you run it, to have the icon for it show up down here. It just makes it easier to get access to it, because otherwise you may not see anything down here, and it may not show up, and it may not be as easy to get access to. So that's all that's for. If you have a cabinet, you may not want that if you have your taskbar set to hide and maybe it screws something up or whatever. So that's optional for cabinets, but you may want to disable that. So all you're going to do is, if you're a desktop user, you're going to turn this on at first. This is the debug window. So what that means is when DOFLinx runs, it's going to pop up here or wherever, but it's going to pop up on your main screen. So this is going to help you make sure things are running. When things are running, then it'll be good to go. Then you can disable that if you want, but I still make sure you have that though for a desktop user. Very important. For cabinet users, if you have problems, you can enable that, and but keep in mind you don't want that enabled at first, because it may make DOFLinx pop up on your playfield screen. Like it may make it pop up under here, and that may screw something up in your game. So only enable that, desktop guys, if you have a problem and you need to troubleshoot. Then it will create a log and help you out in that respect. So now we're going to go through and we're going to actually make sure the rest of this is good to go. So first things first, the direct output config.ini. Again, you just make sure this points to that file here. Okay. So for this guy here, the B2F server, you have to make sure that's pointing to where you have your B2F server installed, which is normally where you have your visual pinball installed, your tables, and B2S server exe. If you're not sure how to add the path in, just copy this, make it easier on yourself, and copy it in like this. Okay, very important. You have to have the slash at the end or it won't work. Extremely important. Okay, now this guy here, he's just gonna make sure he points to your file here. Okay, so path FX3. Now this is not needed for anyone except for, like, if unless you're a cabinet person with surround sound feedback, then this won't apply to you for desktop users or anyone else, because this is meant for DOF, the DOF lighting and feedback. All of this kind of stuff. But that's for FX3 specifically. So I don't know if I have examples up here for any of those. Yeah. So again, if you're running a cabinet, then that's where you would use that. But we're not doing that in this one because you don't have any of that stuff in this section of the video. So what you need to do is, if you want to have surround sound feedback with Pinball FX3, then you need to change it to point to this folder here. Okay, so we're going to copy that and we're going to add that in. And there you go. So what it's going to do is it's going to point to this one, which has all the normal configs for DOF, but it also has the pinup player surround sound feedback commands added in as well for anyone who wants to install the surround sound feedback PuP-Packs for Pinball FX3. So that's for you guys. Make sure that's configured to point to there. And anybody can use, if you're a desktop user, you might want to point to that because maybe you'll use the surround sound feedback option. Who knows? Now, this one here is for cabinet users that need B2S backlash files. And they would go in here. Just make sure you have this folder named and matching appropriately. And again, make sure for any of these paths, you have the slash at the end or they won't work. Now, my recommendation, as I've mentioned before, is don't add these guys in with a cabinet setup. Where are we here? Yeah. So if you have a cabinet setup, I don't recommend adding those in until the very end when you have everything else running first. You have the PuP-Packs running first. You have your surround sound feedback running if you're using that. Add the direct B2S files in last, and only for anything that doesn't use a backlash PuP-Pack, like the Aliens PuP-Pack, for example. You would not, if you're running this, you would not then use one of these guys here. So only add that as the last resort or last thing to do, just in case it's causing a problem with something else, and it makes it easier. Then when everything's good to go, add those files in. So this is for the future pinball link attempt. So basically when DOFLinx is running in the background and you run a future pinball table, DOFLinx will wake up and try to establish a link with a DOFLinx modded table. If the table does have a DOFLinx mod, then it will communicate back and create a link. And this is to enable that option. If you have that turned off, then it won't even attempt to do that. So you have to have that on if you want to run PuP-Packs. All right. So future pinball link wait time. So this is basically how long it will wait when it tries to communicate with a future pinball table when it's first ran. It'll count down, and then eventually, if the table can't communicate back because it's not a DOFLinx table, then it will just stop doing that and go back to its default operation. So this is how long it will try to do that before that happens. Just make sure it's longer than your longest table is the longest time it takes to load a table in future pinball. So if you have a table like Jaws, and it takes longer than 9. It shouldn't, but it takes longer than whatever you have set in here to load. Then it will give up trying to create the link before the table's done loading. So just make sure this is large enough. In this case, it's 95 seconds, which is more than enough for any table. So down here, this is all your processes that are going to be used with DOFLinx. So in this case, we got Pinball FX3, FX2, Future Pinball, and for me, I use it with MAME, so that's why I have that there. So all that means is DOFLinx, when running, will stay asleep, and then when it detects any of these programs you have entered in here, it will wake up and then work with it appropriately as it's supposed to. So that's it, guys. That's all you guys got to do for the DOFLinx.ini, and you're good to go. Just save it. And that's it. So I'll just reiterate, make sure DOFLinx is running as administrator. Make sure that's set because it is needed for FX3 and Future Pinball BAM. And that's it, guys. That should cover you perfectly for everything you guys need to know. And you're ready to go. And so I highly suggest watching my demonstration of how DOFLinx works with FX3 and Future Pinball in this same video series, and that'll make it a lot easier for you guys to understand how this is working in the background. Now, I don't cover setting up PuP-Packs or Pinup Player or anything like that. Those are separate videos. I'll have a separate video for desktop users to run PuP-Packs with Future Pinball or FX3. That's going to be a separate video altogether. So I just want to make sure you guys don't think you're missing something in here. I will have another video for that. Okay, so for this portion of the video, I am going to be specifically dealing with anyone who has a cabinet setup, but also has like normal full DOF toys or hardware. So what I mean is any one of you guys who has a cabinet, who has RGB flashers. So like normally the 5 flasher bar, beacons, strobes, LED buttons, shakers, gears, solenoids, any of the normal standard DOF feedback. You guys, this is specifically for you. Anyone else who doesn't have any of that stuff and only has a desktop setup or only has addressable LEDs or surround sound feedback and nothing else, that's a separate portion of this video. So don't watch this portion. Watch that other portion if you fall under those categories. But anyone who has a full DOF setup on a cabinet, this portion of the video is for you for setting up your DOFLinx ini file. So first things first, of course, you've made sure all your files are installed correctly. Your DOFLinx exe is running at administrator. You have that going just fine. You made sure the DOFLinx.vbs was copied to the future pinball script folder. You make sure that you have these files in here, this guy here and this guy here, and that should be everything you need to go to get up and going. So at this point, we're going to make our ini file for the full DOF cabinet, guys. So you come in here. Now, to explain what the ini is, it's the main configuration file for DOFLinx. So DOFLinx doesn't come with one by default because everyone's setup is different. So that's why you come into sample ini folders. It's just a text file, guys. So you can put whatever you want in it, but you need very specific things, especially for a cabinet. So that's why we have these examples in here. I highly recommend using one of my 2 examples, either this one here, which has the full details of everything and it explains everything on each line. Or you can use this one here, which has the same configuration, but with no explanations at all. Now, you can see this one's a lot cleaner and easier to see, but there's a lot more to understand for a cabinet setup. So a full DOF cabinet setup. So I'm going to be using this one here. So I'm going to copy that guy over. And we're going to paste them in here. All right. So we rename him DOFLinx ini. So now what we do is we're going to go and we're going to update him. Or we're going to configure it actually for our specific setup. Now, this is going to be different for everybody. This is the whole point of why these have to be done separately for every person's setup. So the debug. So first things first, read through the whole thing. If there's anything in there that you don't have or use, then you remove it. Okay. So there's certain sections that you may not have the hardware. So you could just remove the lines. Anything you want to disable, you just add the pound. Where are we here? You just add that to it. Okay. And then this line is no longer used. It's just disabled. So you could do either or. So I'm going to just take you through in order what all this is. So first of all, the debug mode. So if you enable that, what that does is it has a pop-up of the debug window for DOFLinx. Now, I recommend not having that enabled for a cabinet because by default, what will happen is it will make it pop up on your playfield screen, which can cause focus problems or other things going on. So I recommend having that off unless you have problems and you're trying to troubleshoot and fix a problem. That's the only time you should be turning that on in a cabinet setup. Okay. So now we have our directory paths section. So for each of these, you're going to go through. So for this one, that's pointing to this guy here. So just make sure that's correct. For this one here, that's going to point to where you have B2S server installed. So in my case, I have it. Here's my Visual Pinball folder and my tables folder, and B2S server is right in here. So the easiest way to update that would be just to copy the path from here. And then you go in here and then you just update this portion here. But make sure you have the last slash. If you don't have that in there, it will not work. So make sure you have this for where yours is installed. Now this guy here is referring to this guy here. So just make sure it's correct and pointing to the same location and the file names are exactly the same. So now this one here, FX3. So this one is where all the config files are for DOFLinx's DOF triggers and commands and all that for FX3 tables. They're all in here. Okay, so just make sure that points to the location of that. So make sure that's correct. However, if you are someone who is using surround sound feedback under any configuration, whether you have DOF, whether you have MX LEDs or anything with Pinball FX3, if you're using surround sound feedback, and that would be this here, the PuP-Packs that allow you to have surround sound feedback in your cabinet, then you will be changing this to point to this folder here, because this folder has the same configs, but has the additional surround sound feedback commands added to it. So all you're going to do is you're going to update this guy to be like that, and that's it. Just make sure it points to the correct folder. And for this one, this is if you have any direct B2S backglasses for FX3, because DOFLinx supports that. So you would have to make this folder name, make sure it matches correctly here, and you would put them in here. Now, my personal recommendation is don't use these until the very, 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 very end. So don't put any files in there yet until you know you have DOFLinx working perfect. All the feedback is working. All the lighting is working correctly. If you have any PuP-Packs, make sure those are working. So make sure SSF is working. Make sure if you have the Aliens PuP-Pack, make sure that's working. Then if you want to use the direct B2S backglasses, go ahead and use them. I know some people had problems because focus issues and other things going on. So that's why I recommend always using those at the very end. If you have a problem getting them to work, you can always use your front end to have a looping video instead. So that way you can still enjoy all of DOFLinx without the direct B2S, and you can have looping videos from your front end. Take care of that instead. So that's it for our paths. So now we're coming on to the RGB undercab lighting portion. So if you have RGB undercab lighting, and I mean only specifically normal RGB undercab. Now let me just go here. I might have to log in. Yeah, I do. All right. So this is my LED Wiz setup. So this is my undercab lighting right here. Okay. So it only supports normal LED strips, not addressable LED strips. So you can't use any of the, where are they here? I know they're here somewhere. Oh yeah, the RGB undercab complex MX. You cannot use that with DOFLinx. It has to be one or the other, either the normal one or smart. If you have addressable LEDs, then it does not support that. Is my point for DOFLinx. So if you do have normal LEDs for your undercab lighting, then you come to this section here. Now, this first one, RGB style. What that means is when a table is run with DOFLinx, it will cycle through different colors for the RGB undercab lighting. You can have it do it either via rainbow or via random. Okay. For the type of triggering that causes the colors to change, it's either going to be based on time or every time you push the flipper. So you would set that here. If it's based on the time between the flipper flips, then it would be set here. I think that's right. Yeah, the time between the flipper flips, it would actually change it up. Maybe it applies to both. I'm not sure, to be honest. But that would be set. That's what this one is here. For this one, this is for the actual device and output of your RGB undercab lighting. So you would look under your DOF config, look for your device. Is it device 1, 2, 3, or 4? And then you would look at the port of the red portion. So whichever one you have the red portion for your RGB undercab lighting, then you set that here. So the first digit is the device number, and then the digits after that are the port number. Okay. Now this is not set up for my cab. This is just an example here. So that's why the numbers are a little different. All right. So now that you got that done, now we're in the Future Pinball link. So this section is for when DOFLinx is running and you run a Future Pinball table it will, if this is enabled here, attempt to communicate with the future pinball table and create a link with it. If the future pinball table is supported for DOFLinx, then the table will communicate back, and then it will establish a link allowing communication. So that's what this is for, enabling that. If that's disabled, it won't even attempt to do that. Now, this line here is for setting how long it will attempt to create that link. So you want to have it at least as long, if not longer than your slowest loading table. So if you got a table that takes like 1 minute to load, then you want to make sure it's more than that. Now I have this set to 95 seconds. That's what this is right now. So that's more than enough for any table to load. But what will happen is if it doesn't establish a communication with the table after this amount of time, then it will not attempt the link anymore, and it will just run the normal key to output function that I've shown on here.
Gradually change to different colors. You can...
So that's what that's all about. Now this section here is for setting up your hardware for Pinball FX2 and Pinball FX3 tables that have DOF support, DOFLinx support. So FX3, obviously, everything's going to have that because DDH does all the work for that. And for future pinball tables, this is for all tables that have DOFLinx support. So you go through each section, and this file explains what each of these means. So this is your 10 solenoids section, your flippers, your slings, and then your middle and back solenoids. So basically, if you go through the first section, just like before, it's your device and your output. So if you go back to mine, actually, hold on, I got a couple running here. Okay, so if you got mine here, device 1, port 1 for my flippers, and same thing here, progressively throughout. Okay, so that's what that's for. For the next section here, that's our that's the default amount of time that if this is triggered, it will turn on. So, for example, if you have your solenoids in the back that are meant for drop targets and bumpers and other things, it will only trigger for this amount of time. Now, for flippers, they're normally held on, but this is just a default for if it's only pulsed. If it's held on in the game, then it will go longer than this. And that's where this part comes on. This is the max amount of time. So this is more so for flippers, but it's also a good thing for other solenoids as well. So the idea is this is meant for safety. So if you hold down your button for a flipper and keep it on, the solenoid is engaged that whole time. Now, some people worry that it may overheat or burn up or whatever. So this is the portion you put in for the maximum amount of time that that solenoid will stay on if your button is held down. So if I hold the flipper on, right here, it'll go a maximum of 10 seconds. And even if I keep the flipper held on, it will disengage the solenoid. Now, the next time I let go and hit the flipper again, it starts over. So that's what that portion's for. And it's a good idea to have your flippers be longer than everything else. Or you can have them at 8 seconds, 10 seconds, you know, something that's a good safety margin. Now, this portion here is for our pulse width modulation intensity. What that basically means is for something like, imagine something like, let's see here. Oh, shoot. I think I might have accidentally closed what I wanted to show. Okay. So imagine these LED lights here. If they were fading on and off, that's pulse width modulation. It means it's not on or off. It's a different intensity of the output. So that's what these are set for. Now, normally you're going to have these set to the max, which is 255 for everything except for something like a shaker motor. If you have a shaker motor that has pulse width modulated control, you're going to want to set this to the max that you want it to be. So in this case, it's a shaker. If you don't want to have it on max, you would set it to the one single setting, because DOFLinx doesn't support multiple levels of control. It's only the one setting that you have here that it will use for pulse width modulation for something like a shaker. Okay, so that's what you got to go through for solenoids. Keep it maxed out. For the shaker, set it to the max amount. If you have that type of control for pulse width modulation, you you've got a gear motor, you've got knocker. There's also fan. There's also now a new feature that's not shown in here is chimes and bells. So if you're not sure about how to add things, because not everything's necessarily going to be in this file, right? Like right off the bat, the fan's not there. So load the DOFLinx guide. It's fantastic. It's really good. It shows everything you'd ever need to know. Like if I type up fan, let's see. There you go. So it shows the way you can add a fan in this section here. So it's got all sorts of great information. So I highly recommend that if you need any additional information, if you're having a hard time getting things to run. So that you're going to set all those up now. For the beacon and strobe, those are a little different. With those ones, you have an option of on or flash. Now, the whole reason for that is because depending on what kind of beacon or strobe you get, if they're just LEDs or if it's a mechanical beacon that spins, or if you have strobes that flash on and off automatically, or they just stay on, that's what this is meant for. So you configure that depending on what you have. And same thing, device and port number for all of these. So now we get down to the LED buttons in your cab. So if you have a cabinet with LED buttons in the front there for your start button, launch button, if you have a fire button on your lockdown bar, extra coin, exit button, or just normal coin, that's all here. So you just choose the device and the port number, just like I have here for my buttons. And that brings us down to this section here, which is your RGB flashers. So that would be your 5 RGB flasher bar. So I don't have a flasher bar, but I do have my flashers in my speaker holes here. So you would set that up based on the first red of the flasher. So in this case, like I have mine set up like this, and that's how you configure those. So your outer left. Now, in this case, it's not set up for mine. It shows device 2, port 1, but make sure yours is correct. Now, again, if you don't have these devices or you only have some and not others, you can either do one of two things. You can either just delete it altogether, or, again, like I mentioned before, you can just temporarily disable the lines you don't want to use for now. It's totally up to you, whichever you want to do. But important that you don't have stuff in there that you're not using, because then it'll cause nothing but problems. All right, so we got through all of that. So all of that we just talked about is used for only Future Pinball and Pinball FX3. That's the only thing those are used for. Now this section here, the DOFLinx default fallback, right here, and everything pretty much right up to here. It includes a key to output, key to color. All of these fall under what I was showing here. So when something is run and it doesn't have a full DOF support, like a Future Pinball or FX3, or if you have Future Pinball tables that don't have DOFLinx support, then it will fall back to this function, which is going to be
you can have a few different
like this.
For that.
So that's for you guys to try to configure. You can have multiple things under this if you want. It's whatever you want, really. So you can have, for example, your pin cab buttons turned on and just kept on automatically. You can have your keys specifically meant for flippers. So in this case, it's the left or right shift. So that if you have, say, Zachariah Pinball or some other pinball program that doesn't have any for any DOFLinx or DOF, then you can have this where, again, back to this video here, where, you can have it trigger based on key presses or button presses. And that's what this is for here. So this here is just the actual output device that you're using. And yes, it would be obviously ideally the same as what you're doing for the flippers up here for the device and output, or the port that you're using. So you configure those, and then this is the max flipper on time, similar to up here, so that when you hold down the button or the key for the flipper, it'll max out after a certain amount of time and then turn off the solenoid for safety reasons. And Now this section here is key to output. Now you notice I have these disabled right now because I guess they're not being used. So key to output means if you push a button, it turns on an output. That's what that means. Hold on, that's gonna bug me now. So in this case, you would have the key code, and then you would have your device, and then the port number. So that could be anything on DOF Config Tool is what that can be. So well, that's probably a timeout. Oh no, it didn't. Okay, so any of these devices here can be used as long as you have it set up under your port assignments. So whatever you've got set up here, it can trigger. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just an output being turned on or off. That's all it is. So that's key to output. Now, key to color is different. That is using a key to specifically turn on a color. So that would be referring to these guys here. All right. So you would set your key code, your device, and your port number for the red portion of the RGB flasher, and the color you want, and then repeat for the next one, because you can have you can only use this command once. Same with this guy. You're only using that command once, but you're putting all the commands on one line. So if you have 5 different keys with different colors and key codes, you would add that all on here. And all that information is in the DOFLinx guide for how to add that or change all that stuff up. It's all in here. So now that that's done, and then as I mentioned before, you can use those two combined, for example, to do this.
You can have a few different settings for.
So nice and simple. And because this is in the DOFLinx.ini file, this will work for every program that doesn't have DOFLinx support. All right. So that's what this is all about. You don't have to have this on there, but it's a nice default to set up for all your pinball emulators that don't have anything. And then it'll give you something at least for some kind of minimal button feedback, basically button to output feedback. So the miscellaneous settings. So this line here, this is where you add whatever programs you want to use with DOFLinx. So in this case, obviously, Pinball FX3, Pinball FX2, and Future Pinball, they're going to work with any table that has a DOFLinx support, obviously, automatically. For MameLay Plus, that's like what I showed you in the video. Where was it? Up here. Where I was using supplementary config files to allow for all these effects to happen. That's another video. You can watch those in my channel. That's a whole nother topic. But if you wanted to, for example, add Zachariah Pinball on there or some other emulator, that's where you add it. You add the process name here. And then when you run that program, DOFLinx will detect it. And then if you have this stuff configured here, all the fallback function stuff, then you can use that while you're playing those games. Okay, so that's what this section is all about. This section here is just for it helps for some people set up with Pinball FX2 and FX3 to help delay times and stuff like that. That's more if you have problems. This one here is Auto MX. So what that basically means is if you enable that, that will automatically make any table that has normal DOF, I mean normal DOF, not addressable LEDs, normal DOF. So the RGB flashers, the strobe, and the beacon, and the solenoids, the configuration for that on a table will automatically create a basic set of addressable LED effects. That's mainly for Future Pinball or Pinball FX3. So any tables that don't have DOFLinx MX LEDs added, but it does have normal DOFLinx added, then it'll make that stuff kind of work automatically with addressable LEDs, until you get a more proper configuration added. Not as much of an issue for FX3, but more of an issue for, say, Future Pinball tables that don't have addressable LEDs added to them. This one here is more just for debugging if you want to have the output name added. So this section here is if you want to use a feature of DOFLinx that is, basically it's like a pop-up screen. That will pop up maybe on your back glass or something. And you can use that to change settings on the fly with DOFLinx. So, for example, if you wanted to turn off addressable LEDs, or if you wanted to engage night mode, or anything like that, you can do that. And that's all configured here. Now, if you don't plan on using that, then, just get rid of this altogether. Now, the game colors, plain and simple, all of these are meant for Pinball FX2 and FX3, so that when you are playing, your under-cab lighting will cycle to certain colors. So you can see here, Aliens Isolation Pinball. When you're playing that, it's only going to cycle these colors. More like a theme color, with the game, right? So that's what all of these guys are. Now, you can add your own as well if you want to go crazy with, other programs like I did here, but that's more advanced stuff. Again, in another video, that's not what we're talking about here. So, and that's basically it, guys. So if there's anything missing in there, like your extra devices or all that, then you'll have to add that in. But that should be everything you guys need. It's a lot more for full-fledged cabinets, but the big important thing is to go through the entire file and complete everything, or disable what you don't use, or remove what you don't use. That's very, very important. Okay? So when you're done all that, then you save it. And that's it, man. So all you cabinet guys. Now, I will point out, now, some of you guys are like, well, wait a minute, what about addressable LEDs? Don't we set up anything for that? Well, no, you don't actually. DOFLinx will, as long as you have the pass portion done correctly, DOFLinx will automatically take care of the addressable LEDs. You just have to make sure that you, get your config from DOF Config Tool for all the tables on here. So you'll have to generate a config file and copy that over to your direct output config folder, and then it would normally be your 30.ini file. That's the one for my teensy addressable LEDs config, is that one there. So that's the only additional difference you have to do for addressable LEDs. DOFLinx takes care of everything else itself, but the addressable LEDs, it absolutely has to go through DOF Config Tool for the configs. But that's it, guys. So that's it for the cabinet guys to set up your DOFLinx.ini file. So for everyone else with other setups and configurations, you need to watch that portion of the video for how to set up the ini file for your setup. All right, guys. So you should be pretty much ready to go to use DOFLinx at this point now. You should have the files installed. You should have your DOFLinx.ini file here configured and ready to go. You should have DOFLinx set to run as administrator. That's very important. You should have if you have addressable LEDs, your DOF config tool files updated and copied over into the config folder here, and that should be the main bits of your setup. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a few quick demonstrations of with Future Pinball and Pinball FX3 what it looks like on my desktop, because you could see in my videos in my channel all sorts of videos for how it looks in a cabinet. Like, I've got loads of those, so that doesn't help you understand how it works behind the scenes, because maybe if things aren't working right, you don't know how to check for things, right? So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to show you how to just set it up for easy use on a desktop, and also how it can help you in a cabinet if things aren't working right. So first things first, I'm going to show you in the ini file. Now, this one is the desktop version. It's not the cabinet version. So you cabinet guys who are like, where the heck is all the other stuff? Don't worry. This is specific for desktops, but these two lines here are the ones you will deal with. Now, with debug 1 enabled, that's going to make DOFLinx pop up with the debug window. Now, in a cabinet, you don't want that enabled by default, because it may, and I've mentioned this before, pop up underneath your playfield screen. So you don't want to have that unless you're trying to fault find. Okay, so now for desktop, it's the opposite. At first, I want you guys to have that enabled, and that's what I'm going to show in this video. Now, this one here, show in taskbar. If you don't have this line in there, add it in. It's handy, even if you're not going to use it right away. Enable that. What that will do is that will, when DOFLinx runs with or without the debugger, when it runs normally, it'll have the icon show up here, which makes it easier for troubleshooting purposes or access to it or whatever else, if you want to close it because you're doing other things or who knows what. So I recommend trying that out. If the cabinet guys have a problem, it causes a problem for some reason, like it makes the taskbar pop up or some other things going on, then I suggest disabling that. Okay, so that's how we're going to run here right now. Okay, so this is DOFLinx running right now. Now, understand, DOFLinx is designed to run all the time in the background. It's not meant to be launched before a table in a front end. Some people try doing it that way, and it's absolutely the worst idea. Stop that old school way of thinking. It's okay to have it running in the background. It doesn't cause any performance problems. It stays asleep, just like you're seeing right now. This is what you would normally have when DOFLinx is running. It would look just like this. And what it does is it waits until it detects a program is running, and then it will wake itself up and be used as needed. So this is what you see when it first runs. Now, if you have any controllers like LED Wiz or anything else like that, that will pop up and be shown here. If you have a Teensy, however, nothing is displayed for a Teensy, even though DOFLinx has detected it. So don't freak out when you see this message here. No valid devices were found. Now, I'm getting that because I'm running this on desktop, so I have no devices at all running whatsoever. But for cabinet guys who have only a Teensy and surround sound feedback, don't freak out if you see these messages in the log file or on the debug window. So now that that's up and running, I'm just going to show you quick. If you right click here on the debug window, you have a whole bunch of options for testing almost anything and everything. Very, very handy. Just tons and tons of stuff here. And DOFLinx works with game pads and joysticks for doing nudge operations in a cabinet. So that's where all this stuff here is used for. But then you can test a ROM for triggering things or test a direct B2S backlash, test specific devices, all sorts of things. So that's what all that's for. Again, only needed if you're troubleshooting things, right? That's why it's there. So now that I have all that out of the way and you have an idea of how DOFLinx is supposed to run, I'm going to now do a couple of demonstrations for you guys. So and as you can see here, see this that show and taskbar, that won't show up unless I wanted to make sure you guys understood. That icon won't show unless you have this guy enabled. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that in case I forgot to mention that. All right, so I'll just leave them up running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a future pinball table, and this future pinball table has a DOFLinx support and a PuP-Pack. Now you can see right away what's going on. DOFLinx has detected that future pinball has loaded. It doesn't have a table running or anything, but it doesn't care. It's going to start scanning for DOFLinx code right away. So if you're going to use Future Pinball with DOFLinx running in the background, make sure you load a table right away, because what will happen is DOFLinx will keep doing this, and then it will eventually time out. And that's based on what you have here in this line. Okay, so I have mine set up for 95 seconds. That's a ton of time, but make sure you have it large enough. The idea is that after this amount of time has expired, then DOFLinx will give up trying to communicate with a future pinball table, and it will go to its default mode, which is key to output. Desktop users don't care about any of that crap. So bottom line is, load future pinball and run it right away. Now, if you're using this in a front end, the front end will make this all automatic. Like you won't see DOFLinx, you won't see anything. The front end will load future pinball in the table right away. DOFLinx will pick up on it and do what it's doing right now, and then it'll wait for the table to completely load. Once the table completely loads, then if it's got DOFLinx support, it will then send a message back to DOFLinx, and then DOFLinx will create the link and then allow the DOF to happen for the feedback and lighting for the cabinet guys, and it'll allow the PuP-Pack to start up. And you're going to see that happen in a second here. So it just created the link, and now there you go, the PuP-Pack has started. So obviously I can't show you the feedback and lighting on here, but I can show you the PuP-Pack running. So you can see the message over here. This one specifically means that it found the DOF ROM for the cabinet lighting and feedback. It doesn't mention the PuP-Pack, but it does work for future pinball, as you can see. So I'm just going to do a quick demonstration.
Here's to swimming with bow-legged women.
And there you go. You can see that The videos are changing. Everything's working exactly as it should.
So you got your rubbers.
So not only are the videos triggering, but the surround sound feedback is also triggering. The flippers, that's not from Future Pinball. That's from the pinup player. So Future Pinball right now is running, and in a table script that has all the commands for the PuP-Pack and for surround sound feedback and for all the cabinet lighting and feedback. So every time I flick that flipper, it's going to set off a solenoid in a real cabinet, and it's also going to set off the surround sound feedback, and anything else that happens in the table, all of that gets pushed out to DOFLinx. DOFLinx will then push it out to DOF for the feedback and the lighting and all that. It'll also push it out to pinup player for all of the videos or the surround sound feedback that's used. So yeah, so it works great. It's just the initial setup is a little tricky, and there you go. You can see the additional videos working just fine. And there you go. So now I'm going to exit out of the table now. Now, if you're in a front end, normally your front end would close out your front end would normally close Future Pinball completely. That's the way they're designed to work. If you're a desktop user, well, clearly when I exit the table, the PuP-Pack is still running. So what's the deal? The deal is the Future Pinball link is still intact between DOFLinx and Future Pinball. Therefore, that's why the PuP-Pack has not been closed out yet. So when you exit Future Pinball table with DOFLinx being used, it needs to be closed out completely. And then there you see it detected that the link was canceled, and then the PuP-Pack closes out. So that's the way it works. And whether it's in a cabinet or a desktop, that's basically what DOFLinx is doing behind the scenes. So now I'm going to show Pinball FX3. Now again, this is not in my cab. So normally when you would run Pinball FX3, it would just launch right away directly to the table. It wouldn't go to the main menu or anything else like this. But I'm just doing this because it's easier for tutorial purposes. So I have the music turned all the way off on FX3. It's just easier for you guys to hear things. So now what's going to happen is it's detected FX3. And you'll notice also, does it actually show? Yes, it does. Okay, so this line here. So I need to explain something with Pinball FX3. With Pinball FX3, the way DOFLinx works is it reads certain parts of the memory that's triggered in DOFLinx, in Pinball FX3. The areas of memory it uses to trigger the flippers or any other in-game events, and then DOFLinx will just trigger the feedback or the videos or anything else that it's set up for. The problem is every time Pinball FX3 gets updated, then DOFLinx can't read those areas anymore, and DOFLinx needs to be updated to find all those different areas of memory that FX3 is using to trigger all the in-game events. So the bottom line is, every time Pinball FX3 gets updated, DOFLinx will not work until poor DDH completely updates it to work with the newest version of Pinball FX3. So I want to make sure you guys understand that before jumping in, because when an update gets rolled out, people are like, why isn't anything working in Pinball FX3? But they don't realize that's why. So almost every time a new table comes out for Pinball FX3, you can expect DOFLinx to stop working for a little bit until DDH69 gets a chance to update it, and then it'll start working again with the newest DOFLinx update. So you will regularly be updating DOFLinx if you are using Pinball FX3. So I just wanted to point that out before we get into this. So now that DOFLinx has detected Pinball FX3, I'm going to go into a table, and it's smart with Pinball FX3. It knows when tables are being used. So as an example here, Son of Zeus. You can see it detected I'm highlighting Son of Zeus, right? So it's loaded up all the config files for Son of Zeus right off the bat. And because I'm set up
Son of Zeus
for surround sound feedback, PuP-Packs, these guys, where are they? Here. So because I have this installed, all the surround sound feedbacks for all the tables installed, it loaded that pinup player PuP-Pack as well when it initiated that. Every time it switches to a new table, it's going to change over to the new configuration. So you can hear it right now. So I hit the flippers, And there you can see all the actions being triggered. The DOF actions and the pinup player actions are all being triggered.
You are skilled indeed, stranger.
So what I have right now is I have all the mechanical sounds turned off in the FX3 menu, just so that you guys can hear the surround sound feedback and the PuP-Pack working. But yeah. So therefore, you can see that works just fine. So normally, again, if you're in a front end, you would exit the table. It would exit and close down Pinball FX3 completely. And actually, I'll just do that right now. And therefore, you can see it closed out the connection. So I'll just do a couple more quick examples. I guess I should have just stayed in there to make this a little quicker. That's okay. It's not that bad. All right. So now, if to reiterate what I was talking about before, if there's a problem with Pinball FX3 and DOFLinx not communicating, it does give a message about possibly a different EXE version that it can't communicate with. So if things aren't working, turn on the debugger and do a check and see what the message is, or go on the forums and see what's going on. So now that we're in, I'm going to go to an example of a table that has a direct B2S backlash. Okay, so Bob's Burgers has one. I know that. So when you load that up, there you go. You can see it's already there. So it's got all the DOF configs actions going on. So normally your lights and your solenoids and everything would be going off. But also the pinup player surround sound feedback PuP-Pack has been loaded, as well as the direct B2S backlash there. So all of that is actually working. So there you go. And you could hear the surround sound feedback going, and you can see it getting triggered. And you can see the direct B2S backlash running as well. Now, I'm going to point out that, so I'm going to exit out of that now, back to single player. And because DOFLinx is smart enough, it will detect that there is a game change going on. So I will point out that, that direct B2S backlashes, only use them with a cabinet. You could see it running fine on here, but it's not, unless you're going to run FX3 in a small window, they're a pain in the butt to get to work on a desktop setup. Trust me, I've tried, and it's just not fun, and it just doesn't work well. What does work well, though, however, is
this going to be a stand-up fight, sir, or
PuP-Packs.
bug hunt?
Video PuP-Packs. Now you can see it closed down the direct B2S backlash from the other table. And then when we switch to aliens, it automatically loaded up the new config for aliens, and it's got all the DOF ready to go for that, and it loaded up the PuP-Pack. Now, I want to point out there's something people need to understand. DOFLinx handles communication, handles DOF feedback, and handles triggering pinup player. However, when it comes to, like, for example, the aliens PuP-Pack, DOFLinx does not, I repeat, does not trigger the videos. It will start it up, which is why you see it starting here, but it will not trigger any videos. It will trigger only surround sound feedback flippers from the PuP-Pack of aliens. For the video portions, any of the videos to trigger and change, that is handled by dmdext or PuP-DMD control, where they monitor the DMD in a separate window, and then they trigger the videos, similar to how it works with visual pinball. So I just want to point that out because people get confused. They'll see the PuP-Pack pop up, and they'll think everything's running good, but they don't understand that it's the DMD software that triggers the videos, not DOFLinx. So I just want people to understand that. Now, it's not that it can't, but we're kind of limited to what we can trigger off the table here with DOFLinx triggers. So that's why we use the DMD monitoring portion to trigger the videos. But you can see it's still working even with the normal DOFLinx PuP-Pack, with the normal PuP-Pack running as well. And that's it.
We got problems.
And then when you exit FX3, boom, closes the PuP-Pack immediately, and that's it. So that's all I really wanted to illustrate there. So that's the basics of how FX3 and Future Pinball works. Now, anything else that runs DOFLinx is pretty darn simple. You run any other program that's in the ini file. Let's see here. So whatever you have in this line here, once that program is run, DOFLinx will wake up, and then DOFLinx will then use whatever is in the rest of this DOFLinx ini file. Now we have nothing here right now. That's why it's not doing anything for for any other program right now. But I mean, like if you wanted to add a whole bunch of things that I did, like for example, with what you saw in this video, where I'm triggering all this cool stuff. That's not necessarily going to be used in here. That's going to be used in what's called Sup.ini files. So Sup.ini files are supplementary ini configuration files. So what that means is they add temporarily to your DOFLinx ini file. So as an example, this is the main config. Here's an example right here. SSF flippers. So if I wanted to, for example, have surround sound feedback with flippers only, with Zachariah Pinball or any other pinball program that has no support for DOFLinx whatsoever, then I could use this sup.ini file, and I can have my front end program launch this sup.ini file when it launches the game, and then DOFLinx will wake up, use this configuration temporarily, and add it to the main DOFLinx ini configuration, and then use that until you close the game. And then once you close the game, then that temporary sup.ini file will no longer be used. And that's what happens here. Like when I launch from Pinup Popper, any of these games here, it will use the sup.ini configuration file for all the effects for this game. And then when I exit the game, then DOFLinx will then detect that, in this case, MAME was closed, and therefore the sup.ini file is no longer used. If I go to another game that has a sup.ini file, then it will use that configuration temporarily when DOFLinx detects that MAME is run and it's been told to use that sup.ini file. Basically, much more meant to be used with front-end programs, not desktop setups. So that's the other main function. If you want more information on how to use sup.ini files, well then you can watch this video just to get an idea of what it looks like. And then you can go onto my channel. Unless I already have it up there. And down here, so this is my tool that you can use to create DOFLinx sup.ini files for addressable LEDs, Pinup Player, or DOF, whatever else you want to use. This video tells you how to use it, and then this video here demonstrates all the different effects and how they work based on buttons and key presses. So that's extra advanced stuff for the guys who want to do that. Watch those videos. I have tutorials on the DOFLinx Forums as well. If you go to VP Forums here, there's an entire DOFLinx forum right here. So you click in here, and you've got tons of support here. Tons of support for all sorts of things. So DDH is fantastic for helping out. Out there is also awesome. There's others who help out. I help out when I can. And also you'll see certain things like DOFLinx effects right here. You know, this is that one I was just showing you. And I go through the whole gambit of how to do everything, you know, and then just everything you ever want is all in here. So, so my recommendation is breathe easy, take it easy, follow my tutorials, follow this tutorial, and then any other tutorials I may have in my channel for setting things up the right way, and I think you'll be golden. It just takes time to set things up the right way the first time. So I think I'm going to wrap it up right there. I know there's been a whole bunch of stuff going on here that you guys are like, holy frick, man, that's a lot of stuff. Well, again, it depends. If you're a desktop user, you got it pretty easy. If you're a cabinet user, it's a bit more involved. But again, it allows you to do some very cool stuff. And once it's set up, then it works really well. So that's the mysteries of DOFLinx. I hope that was helpful for you guys. And I hope that you're able to enjoy the awesomeness of DOFLinx feedback and lighting, PuP-Packs on Future Pinball and Pinball FX3, addressable LEDs in a cabinet, or awesome DOF hardware and lighting and feedback, all controlled through the awesomeness of DOFLinx that has come a very far way from its early days of DOF FX2. Get on the forums if you need more help, guys. YouTube's okay, but it's not a great support forum. Definitely go into DOFLinx Forums for more help. But I hope this video has been helpful to get you guys up and running. So watch for more videos on my channel. If you're someone who is wanting to play PuP-Packs with Future Pinball or FX3 on a single screen desktop environment, then I have another video for that, so watch for that on my channel, and then that will take you through the process of how to do the specifics to use those and make it work really well. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you later, guys.